In today's episode of Podcasting Secrets, I interview Pete Turner, the host of the Break It Down show, with more than 1,500 episodes under his belt. Pete is a former tactical Army counterintelligence agent turned podcast guru. He's here to shatter your illusions about easy podcast success, discover why most growth strategies are banal BS, and learn what it really takes to build a thriving podcast: time, money, and hard work. Get ready for an unfiltered, eye-opening conversation that will challenge everything you thought you knew about growing your podcast audience. Hello, incurable creators. I'm excited to bring you some bonus episodes featuring exclusive interviews from the 2023 PodUp Virtual Podcasting Summit. Each Thursday for months, you're going to hear interviews from a diverse range of podcasting and marketing experts. My hope is these repurposed interviews will inspire you with new ideas and insights to take your podcast to the next level. And of course, remember to listen every Tuesday for our regular episodes of Podcasting Secrets as well. Now, let's dive into today's bonus interview from PodUp's 2013 Podcasting Summit. Hello, I'm Nathan Gwilliam, the CEO of PodUp and the host of Podcasting Summit. In this interview, I'm joined with Pete Turner. He's the executive producer and host of the Break It Down show. This show is celebrating its 10th birthday with more than 1,500 episodes. Pete is a former tactical Army counterintelligence agent, where in simple terms, he's a spy. He is deployed to numerous countries and has been on more than 1,000 combat patrols. This may not be intuitive, but Pete claims that most of the skills and things he did day to day are 100% transferable to being a podcast producer and host. For the topic of this episode, Pete believes that most podcast growth strategies are banal BS. It's time, money, and hard work. He says, let's get real about growth. Thank you so much for joining us today, Pete.
Hey, it's my pleasure to be here, and what an honor. I love that the industry has grown so much. There is so much help out there, and there's so many people willing to do things like this and to talk candidly. I mean, I'm sitting here in front of you with 10 years of misery and hard work, and the fact that we can have this honest conversation, this wasn't available when I started. It was all comedians and Amazon links.
So why don't you jump in and just tell us about this story, this hard work and persistence, and also this huge success that you've had?
Yeah, well, we started out as a community radio show, and they quickly realized that we had a great chemistry, my buddy John and I, and the community radio people came to us and they said, hey, you can't stay here anymore. You guys got to get way bigger than us. So you're fired. You can't stay. You have to go do something way, way bigger. And they didn't know what it was either. And in their minds, it was go do something bigger in radio, bigger on TV. And we didn't know what to do. So we started figuring out what it was. We started listening to podcasts. This is not the beginning of the podcast world, but it's way before the big wave. And we started listening to Joe Rogan, Jay Moore, all these people that had these very successful podcasts. And next thing you know, I knew Jay Moore. And we both, John and I, knew a bunch of notable people right when we started. And this will sound crazy, but right when we started, I knew a guy named Johnny Walker. And the guy that wrote his book also wrote American Sniper, which became the #1 movie right when we launched our show. And so I have Johnny Walker on my show, who's got this huge smash bestseller hit. The guy that wrote his book, wrote the book for American Sniper, which is the #1 movie for a long time. And that breaks us into all these different people. And we just go gangbusters and the show takes off. Now, all that sounds impossibly successful, but even then the show grew at a normal rate. It never exploded with the supernova, but we could connect to people like crazy because we had all these bona fides. Because of John's connection, we knew Sly Stone. And by knowing Sly Stone, who's one of the pillars in the soul and in funk and G-funk and hip hop communities, that we could connect to any musician right away because they all knew who he was. And so by linking into these guests early on, we had a calling card that allowed me to book guests that we had no business knowing. And they didn't know to say no. And I didn't know not to ask. And so we grew and grew, and the influence of the show grew and grew. And it was an amazing ride. And now today we have this show that has this influence that's incredible. But you couldn't have picked the path. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know where we were going. We thought we did. But the journey has been completely unpredictable. And what the show is and how it produces value for us was completely unknown to us looking back.
Yeah, talk to me about some of the value that that show does produce for people that are on the other side and just starting, maybe help them see a glimmer of hope at the end.
We have to forget about monetization. Unless you can put a large body of people together, and I mean a massive body of people, not 1,000, like not 10,000, 100,000, a million people together, really monetization shouldn't be your main goal. Okay, could you make some money? Does our show make a little bit of money? Sure, it makes a little bit of money. But the value of the network, of being invited to do projects, to be able to say, hey, do you know someone that does this? And all of these secondary and tertiary things that flow to us. If I turned off the show right now, I would be cutting off a major branch of my business that things just show up my doorstep. Hey, Pete, there's a guy interested in doing this, whatever this is. And with that comes a $30,000 payday potentially, right? And so I can create economic opportunity that I never could have predicted. I have a job that I can't define to you, but it's all about production. It's all about being a producer. So if I was to have limited it to Amazon, buy through Amazon link track transit, that never would have been it. If it would have been through book sales, we never would have made it. It's something way bigger than that for us. Right now, every show's got its own path. But what I'm saying is don't limit your scope. Don't limit your vision on what you're going to be, because quite frankly, if you can stick with it, there are doors that you can't even imagine opening yet. I mean, we were given, and who knows what it'll ever be, but we were given several thousand crypto coins in a specific crypto thing, because the guy's like, hey, I like you guys. You did a great thing for me. Here's this little pocket of crypto. Who knows if that'll be something one day? But the guy gave it to us because we helped him out early on. And there's all kinds of stories like that.
The assertion that you've made going into this episode is that most podcast growth strategies are BS. What are some of those growth strategies that you think are overhyped or not effective?
Well, the first problem is that 90+% of shows fail, right? And so you have to get over that hump. Like that's the first thing. And then a lot of them assume that you have an audience. How do you get from one person to 100? How do you get from 100 to 1,000? Show me the person that guides you through that process. Those people don't exist. And so you have to figure out how to cobble these people together. And quite frankly, they're not going to be your friends. You have to find the you that's out there. Now, people will tell you to invent an avatar, and that is not a bad practice, but don't be married to that avatar. That avatar is going to change all the time. And you can look in your metrics and you can decide who that avatar might be. But quite honestly, you don't know who that avatar is. You're just really guessing, and you have to constantly evolve who that avatar might be. It's just like naming, worrying about a name. The name doesn't matter. Your show doesn't exist yet. It's nothing. You have to make your show into something. The name Nike means something in retrospect, but the name Nike in 1974, what did that mean? It was the Greek word for victory. What's the Turkish word for victory? Nobody knows, because it's not a brand. So a lot of these things have to be built. So a show has to be built. So when people tell you these things, yes, for some brand that exists and has some traction, yeah, okay, that might be a decent growth strategy. But if you're bootstrapping, if you're something a step or two after bootstrapping, it's hard work, it's time, it's money. And I'm just going to tell you right now, if you are short on those things, if you don't want to start a small business that has a really bad growth plan, you might want to rethink podcasting as a strategy. Legitimately, like there's a dragon you have to kill. I'm all about these
and
dragons.
It's not a get rich quick scheme, right?
No, it's a get poor quick strategy. It's a get busy quick strategy. This is a small business with a terrible return. If you want to start a small business, go find someone that's great at franchising and spend your life doing that, and then have a reliable return on that. If you have the right kind of business and it makes sense, hire someone who's an expert. That's your growth strategy. If you want to get into podcasting, find someone that's great at podcasting and do one of two things. Hire Pete, shut up and do what he says. Because if you hire me, and I'm not saying hire me, it's not a pitch, but you hire Pete because Pete knows how to produce. Just cut the check for Pete and then let Pete help you do what you want to do, and then do it. But it's not that easy, because the person is always the problem. Or just go find a person like Pete and say, hey, you're doing a great job with your show. Let me sponsor your show and let's work together. and then use their show that they already do, that they're desperate for a little bit of money, and use them and their platform to grow and see if that partnership works. That's way more valuable than scraping together a bunch of small things and seeing if you can hobble your way through to 50 episodes, which again is damn near impossible. I'm not trying to be negative Nancy. I'm just being honest Abe here, right? I'm saying to get to 50 episodes, look at the numbers. It's not a good proposition. So growth strategies, just see if you can jump past 10, 20, 50 episodes. Find someone who's doing what you do or in your space and partner with that person. Find someone who's well past that producer and say, get me to where you are. Get me to 100 episodes. And if you don't have the money for that, well, then hard work, money, and time.
You talk about this hard work and time that it takes to get it up and going. Can you talk about some of the elements of running a podcast that require this dedicated effort?
Yeah. I mean, again, small business, right? So you got marketing, PR, you got a budget, you've got to do operations, you got to do pre-production, production, post-production, planning meetings. The number I always use is 10 to 1, 10 hours to 1 of production, right? So you're talking a lot of time. And if you can't do all that yourself, you have to get volunteers or people that you're going to pay to help you, or people you're going to share revenue with to help you. And all of a sudden the pie gets carved up real small, real fast. So you have to either cut corners on those things, which is fine when you're first starting out, to see if this project has legs. Does this project demand your attention? That's a great question to ask yourself. Does this project insist upon more of my time, money, and effort? And if it doesn't, then kill it and then move on to the next thing. Or maybe you pivot, or maybe you reinvent. But those are some of the elements right there, is what is the show demanding of you? And is it worth it? Is it going in the right direction? And are you putting enough effort into it? 10 hours to 1 hour is a good ratio, good rule of thumb.
I like that idea of being willing to turn things off. Some of the best successes that I've had in my consulting practice are where I've tried a variety of things. You try 10 things and one of them works well and 9 don't work real well. And you just got to have the courage to turn off the ones that aren't working great and double down on the things that aren't. Sometimes it's hard to stop doing things. There's that sunk cost fallacy where you think you can't stop because winners never quit. And what you don't realize is winners do quit. They quit the things that aren't working and they double down on the things that are working.
Most of the shows that I have invented have never been done. Like, I have great ideas for shows all the time, but I don't execute on those because they're not worth my time. And I've already got one. So I've had 2 major shows that I've done, and one of them get to almost 100 episodes. And I realized it was supposed to be like a business platform to help tech companies start podcasts and help with that. But it was just too much work. We weren't getting enough clients and it wasn't converting. And so my partner and I were like, just got to kill it. It was fun. We were getting access to all kinds of places, but there were 2 of us. We couldn't do enough work to convert enough opportunities to make it worthwhile. So we killed it. It was awesome. It was really, people were like, oh my God, this is the best podcast. You guys do it. Keep doing it. We had all of the affirmation we wanted, but none of the purchase orders. So we had to turn it off.
And that takes a lot of courage as a CEO to walk away from all that time and effort you've put into it so that you can put your future time and effort into something more effective. Today's episode of Podcasting Secrets is brought to you by Pod Allies, the done-for-you podcasting services solution. When I speak with CEOs about their podcast, one of the most common comments that I hear is that they know they need a podcast, but they don't have time. Have you ever wondered how some businesses find a way to still run their podcasts while juggling their crazy day-to-day operations? The secret might be simpler than you think. Let me introduce you to Pod Allies. This is a service that's changed the game for businesses in the podcasting world. Pod Allies is a done-for-you podcast production and marketing service. They understand that while many businesses understand the immense value podcasting can have for their business, finding time to produce, syndicate, promote, and monetize a show can be challenging. Pod Allies offers a dedicated team to handle virtually all aspects of your podcast production. From strategy and branding to audio and video editing and guest scheduling, they've got you covered. They even take care of creating blog posts, transcripts, and syndicating your content across multiple platforms. What sets Pod Allies apart is their use of PodUp, their proprietary podcasting software suite. This allows them to streamline the entire podcasting process, saving you time, effort, and a bunch of money. If you're ready to become a thought leader, connect with your audience, and grow your business through podcasting without all of the investment of time and cost of doing it yourself, Pod Allies might be the perfect solution for you. To learn more or to schedule a free consultation with a podcast expert, visit podallies.com. That's podallies.com. Now back to the show. Which growth strategy today do you think is the biggest waste of time?
Everybody says SEO, but what is it? Is it thumbnails? Is it keywords? Is it paying to have transcriptions done? You have all of these things that you spend all of your time trying to jam pack into your message. And it's just, at the end of the day, what does it do? Show me where it works. Show me the person who reliably gets you real SEO bang for your buck. And if you find that person, great, then hire them. But the problem is you're going to have an ocean of people with ideas and asking for your money. But I don't know that you're going to pick up followers from it. I just don't believe it.
So there's these growth strategies that aren't working, that are a waste of time. What growth strategies should we be focusing on? Which ones are going to give us the good return on our time?
You've got to get outside of your network. I think the thing, if you have budget for it, and you might have to grow into this, right? So hire people who are getting started out. Hiring college kids, I think, is smart. I think college kids either in or just out of college, but PR, just you have to do PR. You have to become known. You have to be, if you're going to work hard, you're going to pay someone on the small scale at first. We're talking several $100s a month. You have to buy ads. Get over yourself. This is not about, look, if you're in this for business and everything else, businesses invest in themselves. So you have to invest in ad buys. You have to invest in PR. If you do that, and you are going to fail along the way as you do this, you're going to trust the wrong person. You're going to find someone who doesn't quite know how to work with your brand. You're going to do that. So understand that there's going to be trial and error. But if you find the right people and you get each other and they get you on the Today Show, it changes the game completely. All this stuff about whatever YouTube or whatever it is, you get on Brene Brown's show one time and Brene Brown is a person in your space, forget it. It's over. Like you do that once, get on another show adjacent to that. It changes everything in an instant. And yes, that costs money, but that's how you drive revenue. You have to build the machine as you're in flight though, so that you can be ready to withstand what the public is going to want from you from that. So you're ready to deliver the product that you want to deliver too. I'm not saying you jump right into Brene Brown right away, because it's not about ego, it's about business. So when you get on Brene Brown's show, do you have that book that's ready to sell? Do you have that project that's ready to drive revenue so that you don't waste that opportunity? So you have to do all of these things simultaneously. But I'm telling you right now, PR is the way to go.
Okay, I love that. Getting outside your network and PR, finding someone that maybe is influential to your target audience and being able to leverage their influence so it flows through to you. That's a great strategy. Any suggestions of the best ways to do that? Let's say you identify those people. What are the best ways to get on those shows and get into those people's networks?
I mean, depending on where you are regionally, I would look at just graduating college students. And I would say, hey, I see that you're on LinkedIn, for example, looking for a job and you're in PR. Can I give you some project work? Are you interested in trying to help me get my brand out there? And even if you just work with them for a few months at a time, and let's say you pay them, I don't know, let's say $1,000 over 3 months, whatever that number is. I don't know. I'm just absolutely making these numbers up, but I think that's a reasonable number. And so you spend $1,000. You say, let's say you spend $4,000 over the course of a year, and you invest in your brand with that person. And they get you on 3, 5, 6 shows or different podcasts that you identify as being important, or you just keep your brand fresh and out there and in front of different producers, and then they keep track of what you've done or what they've done. And then you just continue to follow up or hire the next kid. And then you just do that. I think you can iterate into something that's bigger from there. Again, you'd have to manage that strategy. And we're doing this on a fairly small budget, but instead of doing things like have cable, turn cable off, there's $100. You have to get lean in some of these cases. I'm not acting like everybody's rich and has $300 extra a month, but you have to find money to invest in your own program. If you don't have money to invest in your business, there's your first challenge. Back up, work on that. Find a grant, find a small loan, figure out how to partner with somebody who will invest in your company. They don't have to be a working partner. They can be a silent partner. Maybe you have to back up to that first part and say, I need to go get a PR budget, an advertising budget, so that I can have this podcast and have it actually get somewhere, so I can reach the audience that I need to do, so I can sell these books, sell these courses, whatever it's going to be.
What you're talking about here, I've heard called high self-efficacy. Basically, it's you find the problem and then you go figure out how to solve it. And these people that have really high self-efficacies, they're confident that they can figure out and solve any problem. So it sounds like what you're saying here is be a high self-efficacy podcaster. Find the problem and find a way to get it done.
Don't rely on everybody else's advice who hasn't done it. Everybody who has podcasting skills, look at their podcast. Just look at it and see how they've done. Everybody can tell you how to start a podcast. Can they tell you how to do 100 of them? Can they tell you how to do 500 of them? Like look at what they've done. Look at their followers. And sometimes it's not about followers. Sometimes it's not about a lot of things, but do your research. Anybody could start a course. What course are you starting? What course are you buying? And does it make sense? Is it followable? You have to be selective in who you pick up and follow.
Have you seen an unconventional growth strategy for a podcast that somebody's done that's worked really well?
It's not a podcast, but I've seen an unconventional growth strategy that I think is a good illustration for what we're talking about here. This dude took out low cost, and these things still exist all the time. He took out basically remnant billboards all over LA, and it really like crazy billboards. And it was like, this guy doesn't pay his child support. Call this number. And so people started calling the number, and it was his number. And he turned that into like a lead magnet. And he was a music producer. And this turned into him producing for like Rihanna and all these other people. And I'm just giving you one example of his billboards, but he used billboards to drive awareness. And the next thing you know, he's got the biggest acts in the world sitting in front of his desk, and he's putting their music together. So look, remnant ads, they're out there and they work. You're going to have to think of your own strategy for that, but they are absolutely something that you can use, and they are absolutely affordable. I'm not saying they're cheap, but it is a strategy that's outside of the box and has worked in the past and will continue to work.
So the concept there, the concept of remnant means it was advertising that nobody else purchased. Maybe it was in undesirable locations or something. And so you're taking advantage of something. When the audience goes one direction, you're going the other direction. And I've seen other people do that and be wildly successful with that. For example, right after the dot-com bubble burst in 1998, internet advertising dried up, and it became very, very difficult to sell internet advertising for a while. And classmates.com, instead of running away from it, they went and purchased all of this unsold, very highly discounted advertising inventory. And that propelled them to be this wildly successful company that had an exit there. So sometimes following what the crowd is doing is not the right strategy. Sometimes you say, what is everybody else doing? And then you do the opposite, and it might provide a great opportunity. Like you see companies now who are trying to resurrect Yellow Pages or do something in old school ways, send flyers out in the mail, even though that's not, the common modern marketing strategies, because nobody's going that direction anymore. They're seeing some good results.
Even when you talk about remnants, I wouldn't even say it's not useful to a company that maybe wants a different ROI than you want. If there's 5,000 cars that go by that freeway sign at 5 o'clock and at 8 o'clock, it's 2,000, and that's not worth it to the big radio station, but it is to you. You'll take 2,000 people that'll see my brand for $200. Okay. Yeah, I'll buy that. I'll buy that for sure. I've got something clever, so if you think about it as a real opportunity, and that's for $200, like, what did I lose? 200 people or 2,000 people saw my brand in a way that they never would have before, and maybe one of your friends sees it and they get inspired because you get that secondary and tertiary effect. So when you think about that, like, how can I impact people? That remnant ad might be exactly the thing. That Times Square ad that you splurge on, who knows, that may not be the right idea, but if you come up with something, maybe you hire someone who's brilliant at billboards and you say, hey, I'm going to spend some money on this. What would you do? And they're like, I've been waiting. It's amazing what happens when you find some brilliant people who specialize in that exact genre, because there are people that do that and they would love to spring. They're like, I'm tired of doing big corporate gigs. I'm looking for someone like you. I have an idea. Here you go. That happens all the time.
Okay. So what are some of the best metrics that we should be looking at to measure true growth?
I would say look, you can look at clicks and engagement and words, that kind of thing. And for sure, you should be as human as possible. But that I would say is the best thing is anytime you have an opportunity to be human, you should dig in there and really spend time. If you want to build audience and really build connection, talk to people on the phone or go out to lunch. If they're in your area, go out to lunch with them. That might seem crazy, but the reality is if you can really connect and turn these people into friends and acquaintances, that's going to help because they're going to become real advocates. And some of these people are going to have like legitimate money. They're going to want to support you. There's a lot of people that want something to do. They in their lives don't have enough time, but they have a lot of money. And so they're like, hey, I see what you're doing. I have friends like this. I had a friend, he's like got an MBA. He's like, I'm going to give myself a heart attack. He's like, I'm not joking, Pete. I'm going to get a heart attack, but I see what you're doing. I know you don't make a lot of money, but don't you dare quit because we all want to be you, but we can't. So, he's like, let me help you out financially. I have more money than time. I have so many friends that tell me that, right? And they tell me, don't you dare quit. So you're looking for these kind of people. But what am I doing? I'm interacting with these people, not just writing a few words on Facebook. I get up out of my chair, out of my life, and I go sit with these people. And if you look at me on my social media, you'll see I'm always going places. And that's how I build a powerful network. It's not just a network of people I talk to on the phone. And as soon as we get up and done with this, I will be on the phone talking to somebody else in my network, right? So that is part of my time and my money is I talk to people and I engage openly, directly myself. And then people engage with me. I am a person that talks to people.
Okay, so you've established that it takes time and hard work to effectively grow a podcast. How do we stay motivated and focused during those times where we may not see immediate results?
This is where the money comes in again. I would find the task. You have to do all the tasks, at least initially, right? You have to listen to your own show so you can improve your skill as a host. You have to do all of your own posting. But as soon as you can, as soon as you can afford it, you have to offload that stuff because it sucks. It's no fun to do it. At first, it'll be fun to kind of learn how the machine works, but get rid of the tasks that you don't need to do so that you can do the things that only you can do. That would be my advice. And again, I'm spending your money, but guess what it takes to do a podcast? It takes money and time and hard work. So work hard on the things only you can do. Spend your time on the things that are worth your time and spend your money on the things that you need to either you can't do, like PR and creative and the tasks that you don't want to do.
And what do you feel are the best ways to monetize that podcast once you've seen some growth?
That's a big, hard question. I don't think you have the right to even worry about monetizing it until you built a big crowd. It's not a realistic thing for anybody to expect right away. You've got to be able to put 1,000 people together in a small space, like in a room where you can charge tickets before you can expect to get any kind of real money. Sure, you can sell them courses, but then you got to build another course and then another course. And now you're not a podcaster. Now you're a course writer. So I would say focus more importantly on building a crowd and figure out what that crowd wants. And then maybe figure out where the money is. Because if you project where you think the money is going to be, I would say way more likely than not, you're going to miss the mark. The money is going to be there. Figure out how to build an audience. Figure out how to be valuable. If you can be valuable to other people, and this is not me saying this, let me tell you who's told me this. The DOC, who's one of the most important rappers from the NWA family. It was him, Ice Cube, and Dr. Dre that were like the geniuses of that group. And he's like, man, talent, money finds talent. Just go be talented. Go bring a lot of value to anybody you work with, and money will find you. Don't worry about the rest.
Yeah, everybody, remember that point. Just focus on being insanely valuable to people and the money will flow.
It relieves you of a lot of things. Like, yeah, you want to make some money with this thing. Sure. Look, and I'm going to be hard on Patreon here. F Patreon. Don't do that. That's you being successful on Patreon is good for Patreon. Just set up a PayPal account and say, if you want to support me, go to my PayPal link, put money in and ask people for that. If you can get 500 people to give you $10 a month, that's a win. Why give any of that to Patreon? Like you don't need to give a cent of that to anybody. Yeah, you're going to pay a transaction fee to PayPal, but that's peanuts, So don't build a crowd on Patreon where they don't ever promote you. Just build your own thing. Go to PayPal and set up an account and say, this is how you support me. Go to PayPal, fill this link out, click it, give it to your friends, do a QR code. You want to build an audience, you want to monetize, do that first. That'll stabilize you. And just promote the hell out of that.
Thank you for sharing your time and your wisdom with us today, Pete. If our audience has enjoyed this interview and they want to learn more about you and your services, what are the best ways for them to do that?
You can go to, I guess the best way to do it is just, you can reach out to me directly. Like why mess around with the website? Just email me at pete@breakitdownshow.com and just ask me whatever question you want. If I'm helpful to you, I'm glad to be helpful. There's no ask in this. If we need to do a business transaction, I'll let you know. But otherwise, look, I'm here to help people. This is service to the community. I have no call to action here. If you are interested in doing business, we'll discuss that down the line when it's worth both of our times. But the biggest thing is that I want you all to create something. I want you to believe in your dream. I just don't want you to get lied to and get bogged down by 1,000 tasks before you get going. Name your podcast any damn thing you want. Spend 8 seconds on it and then just go build it into something incredible. That's what I want you to do.
If you have not yet signed up for the Summit upgrade, I encourage you to click the button that's below this video and learn more about that upgrade, where you can get a free trial of PodUp and a free challenge course about podcasting. And thank you again, Pete, for joining us for this episode and for the value that you provided to our audience. And here are my key takeaways from this episode. Number 1, most podcast growth strategies are overhyped. Real growth comes from hard work, time, and money investment. Number 2, the value of a podcast often lies in the network and opportunities it creates, rather than direct monetization. Number 3, podcasters should focus on building an audience and providing value before worrying about monetization. Number 4, PR and getting outside your network are crucial for podcast growth and potentially more effective than SEO strategies. Number 5, partnering with established podcasters or hiring experts can accelerate growth more than trying to bootstrap everything alone. Number 6, a good rule of thumb is to spend 10 hours of work for every 1 hour of produced content. And that is one of the greatest arguments for why podcast production companies such as Pod Allies is a great opportunity for us to save those 10 hours and allow us to focus on building our business while someone can help produce and market our podcast for us. Number 7, be willing to quit or pivot projects that aren't working despite the sunk cost fallacy. Number 8, unconventional marketing strategies like using remnant advertising can be effective in gaining visibility. Number 9, building genuine human connections with your audience is more valuable than focusing solely on metrics like clicks and engagement. And finally, number 10, instead of using platforms like Patreon, consider setting up your direct payment methods like PayPal to retain more of your earnings. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Podcasting Secrets. I wish you success as you strive to build your thriving podcast. And I recommend you check out PodUp. It can help you to create, grow, and monetize your podcast with 35 different integrated modules. And you can get a free trial at podup.com.